Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 97 of On the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jodi Lai, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of AutoTrader.
And I'm Sebastian Bell, and I'm the Associate Editor at AutoTrader.
And today we have a very special guest with us. Joining us on the show is Barry Hertz. He's the Canadian author of Welcome to the Family, a book that looks at the history and the origins of the Fast and Furious franchise and explores its explosive success. Welcome to the show, Barry.
Thank you so much for having me.
So first of all, Seb and I have both read the book, and I don't think I've ever read a book this quickly.
I was going to say devoured is probably more the word. I burned through it really fast too. I was playing video games and listening to it all night. I was driving and listening to people talk about driving. So it was really cool. And it's a really entertainingly written book. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, I'm so glad to hear. And I tried to write it so that it would approximate as best as can, like a journey through the movie. So, fast and, more polite than furious, but, entertaining and thrilling and all that fun stuff.
Well, I was in pretty immediately because not too much of a spoiler, I hope, but the opening line is about Vin Diesel punching fate in the teeth or something like that. So yeah. I feel like it really does justice to the themes of the movie.
Yeah, really hooked me in the very first line. And so, Barry, maybe give us a little bit of a background. Like, you're a film critic for the Globe and Mail, but like, what kind of drove you, pun intended, into this Fast and Furious world, and what kind of inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, I'm going to use as many puns as possible in this conversation. So
Perfect.
I hope
we
the
love that here.
Okay, good. So we're all set. They're on the same page. So I'm a film critic with the Globe and Mail. I've been working in film journalism for the past 25 years or so, let's say. And, I watch a lot of movies in my job as a critic. And as such, I like to consider myself like a big tent moviegoer. Like, I like art house as much as I love independent, foreign language, Oscar stuff, and, big juicy summer blockbusters. And the Fast series is one I've always been really fascinated by. I've enjoyed it both sincerely and ironically. I just, I love how crazy the films have become over the years and just how absurd they become. And I like watching car chases. I like watching people drive cool cars. I love people getting in these magnificently crazy fist fights in which they're throwing each other through walls and no structural damage is happening. So I thought that there was both a lot to say about the evolution of the franchise itself and how the films themselves have, they're incredibly financially successful. It's one of the biggest franchises of all time. And yet they don't really, garner the kind of respect they, I think, deserve or earned over the past 25 years. We don't talk about them like we talk about the Marvel movies or the Star Wars movies or the Mission Impossible movies. It's kind of something viewed as lowbrow. And I think there's actually, that's incorrect. I think there's a lot of very interesting themes and discussions to be had in there. What they've done for car culture, what car culture has done for them. So I thought there was a lot to take apart there. And I thought, okay, well, let's dive into it in a, very long book.
I gotta say, I love what you did here especially because you started at the very, very beginning, before the franchise was even a glimmer in someone's eye. You went back to the very, very beginning, Kenneth Lee's 1998 article in Vice it was about the California tuner scene at the time, which was bubbling but not mainstream. It was called Racer X. And I found that whole backstory so interesting because when the first movie finally came out, I think I was in the 9th grade or something like that. And I remember seeing it in theaters, and a lot of my friends and people I knew were already driving cars like that, and they were already part of that scene. I grew up in Markham, Ontario, which is kind of where this was, the Canadian version of this was in Markham, Ontario. And I remember exiting the theater after we saw that movie, and that parking lot felt alive. People were doing highly illegal and very dumb things, but I was just so happy to be part of that. And it made me so nostalgic to read about those origins in your book.
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar kind of experience and reaction to that first film. Like I was a teenager working at a multiplex in Elgin Mills in North Richmond Hill, Ontario, just north of Toronto. And in the summer of 2001, when the first film came out, I remember like watching people go back into the parking lot there and just like rev the hell out of their like crappy little Acuras and trying to do like just trying to approximate that feeling as much as you can. And people are doing donuts in the parking lot. It was crazy. People just like shot out of that theater with so much adrenaline and so much energy. And that's what kind of hooked me onto the films in the very first place. Like I was, I would not consider myself like back then like a car guy. Like I drove my parents' minivan to work, and that was about as exciting as it got. But afterward, you just like you wanted to grip onto a steering wheel, and you really wanted to floor it. You wanted to get close to that sensation of speed, which is treated in a really weird and surreal way in that first film. And it kind of,
Yeah.
though the way that the races are kind of filmed as the series goes on, it's very interesting because each director has their own kind of visual language to portray that. But yeah, I mean, the feeling that you got walking out of that first film was like a lightning bolt, really.
It really felt that way. And I want to go back to what you said a little bit about like not being a car guy, because this is one of those franchises that like hardcore car people hold so dear and so close to their heart.
Yeah.
But I'm always a big advocate of like you don't have to be a car person to participate in car culture or to like car things. So I really liked your approach in writing this as a non-car person. But did you find any part of that like challenging when tackling such an important franchise?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I've become something more of a car person, but by like I don't drive a minivan anymore, but I also still can't drive stick. And I've never even tried. So I walked into it knowing way more like I'm a film guy, I'm not a car guy. And even though I've watched these movies many times over, I'm still like I still didn't really like pick up any car language. Like the car culture there is like exotic to me and it was enticing, but it wasn't something I was familiar with. So it was there was a big learning curve coming into it for sure. And it was me like, going and reading a lot of, Road and Track and other magazines just to learn about the cars and the history of the cars. And it also helped that I connected a friend of a friend is like one of the car gurus I feel in Toronto. And he works for marketing for one of the big auto agencies. And so he was like my Dom Toretto in a way. He was my guy who helped me enter the car culture and learn about it. And I would send him chapters and it was like, am I describing this right? Like, and he's like, no, that's totally wrong. You're making up how an engine works. I was like, okay, well, thank you. I needed that. So I made just sure to be as accurate and authentic to the car culture scene as the films strived to be in those early days.
Well, it's interesting because throughout the series, it seems like it involved a lot of people who weren't necessarily car people. Even the Racer X article was written by somebody who was just sort of like looking for something to write about and ended up finding these people in New York City. So it is kind of interesting
Right.
how it really does draw in all kinds of people, and especially non-car people who get really excited about it. And like for me, I think it was part of my wanting to pursue this. I remember sitting in my family's minivan in the back, and my two older brothers were discussing how they were going to start an aftermarket tuning company after we saw the first movie. And so it was really exciting. It really invites people into the car space, which I think is really fun and cool. And it's like, I think your book does that too in a lot of
Oh,
ways.
thanks. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, like
Yeah.
that's the other what I love about the fast movies and kind of and with talking with people who, are integral in making them is it wasn't there's no sense of exclusionary kind of
Mm.
culture. Like it's not like, oh, you don't know what like this, yeah, that's aftermarket, piston engine, whatever it is, like you don't know what a V8 is, like get the heck out of here. It was like, okay, you want to learn, you're interested, let's teach you. Let's get you into it. Like let's grow. It's all about growing the culture, right? It's not like it's a subculture that is not kind of hiving itself off. It's one that demands and kind of operates on growth. It's about making your family bigger, not to abuse the family metaphor, which, we certainly will, and the book certainly does. But that's kind of what I liked about it. And the other thing that was so interesting is, and we can get into this later, is like the diversity element within car culture.
Mm.
It was all, it was people from all different kinds of backgrounds coming together and just sharing their love of automobiles. And I found that very fascinating.
I mean, I love that, and I think that's why this like really hit home for so many people. This franchise is because at that time, like I did not see like cool Asian people on in the movies, and so I think that was part of why, like beyond the car stuff, why everyone in that parking lot was so charged up because that movie theater that I saw it in, it was in an Asian mall,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I think everyone finally felt like so happy to see their culture reflected in Hollywood in like a very positive and like very badass and cool way.
Well, that was a big deal in Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, right? Can you say a little bit more about Justin Lin's involvement in the franchise?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I think, the first movie kind of like had that first opening kind of throw in terms of diversity and like, and it was trying to be very authentic to Southern California car culture of all these people coming together. But when Justin Lin came for part 3, which was Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, he very much wanted to give a more modern, almost postmodern representation of Asian American culture and global Asian culture. So the initial script that he kind of was handed when he joined this film was like, it was very cliched. It was about a white guy going to Tokyo and learning to drift. And, there was, a lot of geishas and Buddha statues and like women in kimonos and, very like Mr. Miyagi kind of Karate Kid stuff, well-intentioned perhaps, but still very cliched and stuck in this version of the past. And he was like, no, we got to be more modern with it. We got to be more contemporary. We got to be more authentic and sincere. And he made it like this modern day Western. And he brought in the character of Han, played by Sung Kang, who had become so pivotal to the franchise over time. And that was his vision. And part of that was also, I'm going to have a lot of these Japanese characters speaking Japanese subtitled. We'll subtitle it. We're not going to have them speaking broken English, which is kind of like a radical thing to do back then for a summer movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very interesting to see. And then, his involvement from Tokyo Drift on just kept on pushing that diversity angle and that representation angle and making Han, of course, like the coolest guy you've ever seen on screen. And, as you say, like in terms of like Asian American representation on screen, like it was kind of relegated to like, mustache twirling bad guys
Yeah, or like a ninja
or
lady
like
or something.
nerds or like, yeah, or like
Yeah.
ninja lady, like something like that. Somebody kind of parachuted in with like tons of
Mm-hmm.
cliches. Whereas Han is like, yeah, it's like the coolest guy you've ever seen. And you just like, guys want to be friends with him, girls want to be with him, that kind of thing. So it
Even
was
when
pretty
even
radical.
Devin Aoki, yeah, even when Devin Aoki showed up, I was like, oh my God, I want to be her. She's everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And she had that really cool pink car.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Iconic, right?
Absolute
yeah.
icon.
Okay, so so you interviewed like over 170 people who were involved with the film in researching this book. What was the most surprising thing that you learned during all of this research? Because there's so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and I was very grateful for everybody involved in the film who took the time to talk with me. Um, I don't know if I could narrow it down to this is a great question, and I should have a better answer for it, but I think, like, overall, what I learned to appreciate so much was the stunt work, like, the second
Mm.
unit photography. I mean, as a film critic, you kind of have, like, a baseline understanding of how filmmaking works. But once you actually get into the nitty nuts and bolts of it and talking to people who are involved in it, I found like the world of production kind of opened up for me and I had a whole new context. Like so much of the stuff that we love about the fast films is all second unit photography, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
action unit for lack of a better term. So I really learned like how they really like put their lives on the line, how they manage these intricately designed stunts and how for the fast films in particular, they're very much focused on practical action. And by that, like in camera action. So by that, I mean actually crashing, two cars, or crashing, thousands of cars over the years, rather than using digital visual effects technology to achieve that. And I think it shows on screen, because there is something about, the real crunch of metal and twisted, and glass shattering and smoke and fire. Like there's something that excites the human eye about that. So I guess kind of the one thing I would say I learned the most is just like how much power these unsung heroes of the franchise have. And I tried to, craft it as something of an ode to them, or a love letter or whatever, because they don't get the respect.
Yeah, that totally comes across in the book. I think that it really was one of my favorite parts of the book, is that like all the behind the scenes like secret stuff that we got to learn about the stunts and the stunt actors. And just like the mechanics and logistics of how to pull off something like that.
Totally.
Like that scene where they're dragging that huge safe
Oh yeah.
through Rio, was it?
Yeah, Rio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you revealed in the book that like, oh my God, there was somebody driving inside that safe. And I was like, of course.
Well, not just that, but that one of the safes had a toilet in it because it was so hard to get in and out.
Yeah. I mean, that guy lived in there for a good amount of time. But yeah, like the safe thing, I mean, that's like an all-time action sequence in terms of movie history.
Totally.
I think.
So good. I think honestly one of the
it's-
best ones that exist in the franchise for sure.
Completely.
One of the things that surprised me the most was that the second unit is also doing a lot of writing, because like in the script, the stunt scenes, for many of the movies, the stunt scenes were down to just like, and then the greatest car chase in the world happens here. And basically that's all they had to go on. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I guess that was a very surprising thing to learn as well. And then, although like when you think about it, it makes sense, because, if somebody were to just write down these action scenes beat by beat by beat in a script, that script would be like 500 pages long. So I think, the screenwriters for a lot of the films, Chris Morgan was kind of the main writer for parts 3 through 8. He knew that the action unit, second unit, was going to deliver on what was in there. And, Justin Lin, as kind of the creative architect of the whole thing, was very particular about how he would stage those action sequences. And it was interesting listening to, collaborators describe that when you're doing an action sequence, at least when Justin Lin is doing an action sequence, it's not just about, car A collides with car B and et cetera, but like he's mapping it out for those emotional narrative beats, like every kind of swerve of the wheel, every obstacle that they encounter, there's some like emotional resonance to it. And I think like if you rewatch those films, and especially if you rewatch that alt chase from part 5, you really do see it. Like there are like these little, every moment you see, like it flashes to Vin or it flashes to Paul Walker, and you see that their characters are going through something. They're making these split-second decisions that inform the rest of the pyrotechnics and explosives and all the craziness that's to come next.
I love that. You learn so many of these interesting tidbits in this book. So like honestly, if you are a fan of the book or a fan of the movies, you should read this book. If you don't care about the franchise at all, you should still read this book, because I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah, and it is such a cool exploration of how movies are made, because it's such a big project. It's amazing that any movie gets made ever. It seems so unbelievable. And yeah.
Yeah, and especially with this whole franchise, like I thought the most interesting thing would be, like the drama between Vin and The Rock, or like, how you would deal with the death of Paul Walker. But like there was actually so many fascinating layers to this book that I didn't even consider before I got started, So like congrats on just tackling it from so many angles.
Oh, thank you. I mean, yeah, to that point, I thought, the films themselves are interesting, and the evolution of the films are interesting, but there is so much like off-screen drama that went into making them, that I thought, again, even if you have no knowledge or desire to think about Fast and Furious as a subject, there's themes in there. There's like just pure human drama in there that will grip you, and I feel like the way that the Fast films have grown over the years and the way that they faced various challenges, Paul Walker's death, the departure of a director mid-production, the, beefs between their egotastic stars, like that kind of tells the story of Hollywood big budget filmmaking over the past 25 years. So there's a mirror there that I hope, if you're a fan of the films, you'll devour it. But if you're not a fan of the films, you'll learn something about just how the industry operates.
So, like, why do you think this franchise is so misunderstood? And it obviously, I think, deserves a lot of justice, but I don't think a lot of people see it that way. So, like, pitch them.
I think one of the things that has hurt it over the years is its name. It's kind of, it's a silly name. If you say Fast and Furious to somebody, they'll be like, what? That, meathead it doesn't get a lot of respect just on the surface of it. But I think there is something that goes a little deeper into people's apathy or even antipathy toward it, is that it is a very blue collar franchise. It is a working class franchise and Dominic Toretto and his gang, they started off in garages. They have grease under their fingernails. They're not walking into a big, fantastic, like opera house a la James Bond and tuxedos and Armani or anything like that. They're walking through the back door. They're in their tank tops and their t-shirts, and they're just doing stuff because they know how a car works, so they know how the streets operate. And I think that is something of a cautious or not, something of a hurdle for a lot of audiences to kind of get over and glob onto. So for so many of the franchises that people aren't afraid of talking enthusiastically about, like a Mission Impossible, where Tom Cruise is decked out in a tuxedo and has all these gadgets and high tech whatevers. The Fast guys are, they're just kind of, they're working class guys who are just using their skills with cars to get ahead. And yes, those skills eventually get outlandish, and we're in outer space and everything like that, and we're outrunning nuclear submarines. Okay, I get it. But there is something a little bit that's keeps people at a distance, and I don't think they should. I think they should kind of take a step back and reevaluate what the series is trying to say and what it has to say. And I think they'll be surprised at the answers.
Yeah, I mean, I have always loved this franchise because it's just like a perfect combination of a bunch of different things I love. Like, I love movies, I love action movies, I love cars, I love drama, beautiful people. Like, all of those things are in this franchise, right? And I also love camp. And I feel like a lot of this series is camp, and I feel like the people who do not understand it don't understand camp.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's really over the top in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways that were intentional. Like, and when they finally went to the moon in one of the movies, it was like kind of half winking, and they sort of knew what they were doing when they were going to space.
I think they're like leaning in. They're leaning into the campiness of this, and I really, really appreciated that. I loved it, and I think you kind of addressed that in the book too, where it's like they know it's crazy. That's the whole point.
They are very well aware of how absurd it is, and that's what I guess I love about it too, is the ambition behind that absurdity, because every sequel like doubles down on the one that came before. Like, it is very much always intent on going bigger and bigger and better. And they're totally aware that they're being ridiculous at many points. And that's why I love the space moment in F9. And a lot of people do not. It is a very polarizing moment in the franchise. But it's Tyrese and Ludacris, up there in space in the kind of crappiest car possible, which is the Pontiac Fiero. And they're looking
which
down.
I would like to say. I feel like you've done an injustice to the Pontiac Fiero. I'm sure that to the movie makers, they thought it was the worst car of all time. But I would like to defend the honor of the Pontiac Fiero.
I mean, it's known for bursting into flames. So
yeah, I mean, that was kind
of
much
maligned vehicle.
Although
I know, I'm kidding.
Justin Lin of the many vehicles that were kind of proffered to him over the course of the series is like, oh, do you want to take this home or keep it as part of your own vehicle? He chose the Pontiac Fiero. as his take-home vehicle. So there's a genuine love of the Pontiac there. But I mean, so when they're up in space in this car, they're marveling to themselves how far they've come. It's like, look at us, like two homeboys in outer space. Look how far we come. Like, I think that's the actual dialogue, and it is very much like the franchise, Comet taking a step back and talking to the audience and say, like, we started off as this, like, B movie street racing thing. Nobody thought it was going to be big, let alone spawn a multi-billion-dollar franchise. And look how far we've come. So it is. So all of which to say is, it's very much self-aware of all the ridiculous things it does. And I don't think you can say that about too many other franchises of its size.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think like there's a lot of lessons that other franchises can learn from the Fast universe. Like, what are some of those lessons that, big franchises like Marvel and like, I don't know what, Star Wars even, like what can they learn from this that I think people find so hard to replicate?
I think it is, of course, they put a lot of effort into the action, and they put a lot of effort into the cars. Millions and probably billions over the whole franchise of getting these cars. But they've always valued people. They've always valued the characters. In Marvel or DC, it's a property. It's like an idea. You have a Batman, and anybody could kind of play that Batman. And we've seen like 4 or 5 people play Batman over the past 25 years, right? Same with Spider-Man. Same with James Bond. But there's only one Dominic Toretto, and that's Vin Diesel. So you don't recast it. So you follow it. And we've been following Vin as much as we've been following Dom and the evolution of the actor and the character over the past 25 years. And we've formed an attachment to him. And, we all laugh. And certainly, the title of my book very much alludes to the family thematics that dominate this series. And if anybody says, like, what's the theme of the Fast movies? You just say family. It's just like family, like just one word. But that's what they've relied on, and that's what they've built up over the years. And it makes you feel a part of the family. Like the Fast community, the Fast fandom is that one big global family. And it doesn't matter your background, and it doesn't matter where you're from, and it doesn't matter, what you've done with your life, as long as you love these characters and can relate and enjoy like the cathartic or vicarious thrill of watching somebody drive a car really fast, really dangerously, then you're in. You're a member of the family. And I think that's what keeps people coming back and putting that audience first. Very much like in a dialogue with that audience, and not say, okay, well, we haven't made like a Star Wars movie in like 5 years. We should really exploit that brand. Let's make a new one, and let's, cobble together this ridiculous thing. I think that's kind of what the prime difference is in the Fast movies. They're very much about, you love these characters. We know you love these characters. We're going to treat them with the amount of respect they deserve and you deserve. We're going to put them in wild, crazy situations. Don't worry, they'll come out the other end. Death is not even an obstacle. If they die, we'll bring them back. Don't worry. We know you love them.
We'll bring them back because it's happened before.
It's happened before. There's like nobody really stays dead in the franchise. So I think that's kind of what sets it apart there in a lot of ways.
That's kind of a double-edged sword, though, the way you describe it in the book, of like Vin Diesel being so tightly connected with Dom Toretto, but also making challenges for the filmmakers in a lot of ways. Can you say a little bit more about the weight of having a cast that is so well known?
Yeah, totally. And this was a question that was posed to me the other week by somebody. It was like, do you think that the Fast films have suffered because of Vin Diesel and his crazy work ethic or demands and behavior, or do they only succeed because of it? And I think, yeah, at this point, he has made himself so intrinsically tied to the franchise that there's just no working without him. And that's a problem because the guy gets old, the guy gets, problematic. A lot of people have issues with him and his work behavior. I mean, it is the worst kept secret in Hollywood that he is constantly late and makes everybody wait around. And the stories that I heard from crew members and cast members about just like wasting not only their time, they're talking about like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars every hour that you kind of waste on these sets. Like, these are huge things which have hundreds of people just sitting around doing nothing. It's crazy. And yet he's made himself so essential to it that how do you go forward without it? And that's the challenge, and that's what the book kind of comes up against as it gets to the end, is like, what's next? Because we've come so far, but we've come so far with so many challenges, and it's always gotten to just about the breaking point. And Fast X almost did fall apart because of that breaking point. That how do you continue? Like with the Jurassic movies, as long as you got dinosaurs, it doesn't matter what human is on the other end. If Scarlett Johansson is, being a diva on set, you recast her, no problem. But these ones, yeah, you're right. It is very much that double-edged sword.
So what would you love to see in the next installment of the franchise?
I think, like a lot of people, like a lot of fans, I should say, it has gotten like a little too big. It has, the last Fast X took place in like 6 different places around the world. The characters were split up for a large part of it. Like Vin was pretty much on his own. Han and Roman and those guys were like on their own journey. Letty was like in an Antarctic prison with Cypher. It was like too much separation. So bring the family back together. Make it just, I'm not saying making like it intimate like the first movie was intimate, and like the biggest set piece would be like a truck hijacking, but just make it a little bit smaller, a little bit more raw, a little bit more, I hate to use this term for this franchise, but real. And just just get it back to like the roots of it a little bit. Not make it like this total globe-trotting super spy adventure, but maybe make it like Fast Five, which is again like a lot of people's favorite one, where you have like one kind of heist, one kind of objective. Everybody is playing their role, and we're in one, not like specific, like you have to be in like one quarter of LA, but just like choose one city to be in. And ideally it would be Los Angeles, because that's where it all started. So that's how I would try to rate it in a little bit and give it a closing, wallop of emotion like, all the other films have had.
Yeah, I would love a back to basics approach and a happy ending, like a truly satisfying happy ending that like everybody could get behind, right? Just to close this out, Barry, was there anything that came up in your research that you really wanted to include in the book, but you couldn't for one reason or another?
Oh yeah, there is a lot. There's a lot because, when talking about these movies, especially ones that were made like, 25 years ago, memories fade. People have very different versions of what happened. There's a lot of kind of like Rashomon situations where like talking to one person, like, this is definitely how it happened from my perspective. The other person's like, what? No, it was more like this. So there was a lot of certain like instances of, behind the scenes tension and stuff like that I just could not corroborate in a authentic way that I would be comfortable with, like having that perspective kind of set. So like, for instance, like I'll say like on part 8, which is probably the most difficult movie to make for a lot of reasons. You're coming off the death of Paul Walker. You have a new director in there. The tensions between Vin and Dwayne were at their peak on this one. And there was a lot of, kind of craziness of people doing bad behavior and, just not being true to the franchise and the spirit of camaraderie that filmmaking of this size necessitates. That I was like, oh, that's like such a juicy anecdote, like just like things going completely haywire. But I just could not get enough, second or third sourcing on it. There was one story though that I did get a lot of sourcing on, and I just couldn't figure out a way to organically include it in the book. It involved basically like the sound design team for the films is their own like kind of super team. They make sure they go out and like every like motor, every like exhaust, like they get the exact sounds from those real cars to match whatever is on screen. Like they're very authentic about it. And I think it was on the 5th film that one of the sound mixers, his name is Peter Brown, and he's been with the franchise since almost the very beginning, still is with it today. He had like the final sound mix, like he was ready to deliver to the studio, and he like left his house in Santa Monica like early in the morning to make the deadline. And he got carjacked going on the way there. And like, so then it involved like this police chase to like get this car. So it was like a real life Fast and Furious scenario playing out with these guys who make the Fast and Furious films. And the way the way he told it, the way I heard it from other people, was just like so crazy. It was so fun. Everything worked out in the end. It was just like a real like morning of like high anxiety, but I just couldn't, there was just like no way I could have gotten into it with like spending like 20 pages and I was like, okay, this is kind of slowing the momentum of everything else down. So, some material has to be left on the cutting room floor. What can I say?
I mean, thank you, Barry, for sharing that with us and our audience. I think they're going to love that little tidbit of information. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week. It was so fun to chat with you. If you all haven't gone out and got Welcome to the Family yet, I highly recommend that you read the book. Maybe do a marathon of all the movies, because I had so much fun reading this book. It was so fascinating. I learned a lot. And I can't wait to pass this on to like some of my friends so that we could all talk about it together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to read it and for having me on. It's like, I it was a lot of work doing this book, but I wouldn't have spent so many hours of my life doing it if I didn't love talking and thinking about these movies. That's, it's heaven for me.
Yeah, it really shows through the book. So thank you so much, Barry. Thank you all for joining us today. Drive safe, and we'll see you next time.